Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Gaming and a new video and series on the channel explaining exactly how specific league mechanics work, how to profit from them, and how the Atlas Tree and Scarabs can synergize together. These guides were made during the 326 League, so please check Atlas Trees and Scarabs if you're playing in a later version of the game. Delirium is an in-map mechanic that functions in two different ways, in the form of Delirium Mirrors or maps with built-in layers of Delirium. Before we go over the two different adaptations, let's first go over what Delirium is and what it does in your game. Delirium is a layer of fog that gets added to your map, which increases the rewards, difficulty, and monsters in your encounter as you enter further into the delirious landscape. The difficulty and reward is based on how delirious your character becomes in the encounter, which we'll come on to later. It's often a great way to get even more loot and enemies into juice content, but can also be used as part of an easy strategy to help generate more rewards. I mentioned these encounters come in the form of either a mirror or just part of your baseline map, so let's go over them and highlight the differences. Delirium Mirrors will spawn at the start of your map and they're completely optional content. They have an 8% baseline chance to spawn, but you can guarantee a mirror in every map with either a scarab or points on your Atlas tree. If you decide to run through the mirror, the Delirium mechanic will start. If you decide to skip it, the map will just play out as normal. At any time during the map, you can end the Delirium encounter by pressing the fast forward button. At this point, any loot you've generated will be dropped at the ground. You can also bind this to a hotkey in the options menu. When you enter a mirror, you'll notice a reward tile pop up on the bottom of your screen. As you kill enemies, the counter will start going up. This is a number of rewards you'll be given that match the specific reward tile. As the counter goes up, more reward types will also get added, as seen in the footage in the background. When you end the delirium, or the fog runs out, the rewards will drop after a short timer. The delirium fog moves as soon as you run through the mirror, and it will slowly move towards the end of the map. If you're too slow through the map, or in some cases too quick, you're going to go outside of the fog, and a 5-second timer will come up to warn you that the encounter will end. If you want to continue in the fog, you need to try and get back into it. Interacting with specific league mechanics while in delirium will extend the timer of the fog. So if you struggle to keep up, doing things like strongboxes, beasts, or essences are a good way to get more chance to keep up with the fog. There are also Atlas passives you can take to help, which we'll go on to later. You become more delirious the further away from the mirror you get, which increases the damage and the life of monsters. In long linear maps, this is much more noticeable than in small maps. This also comes into the equation of how many simulacrum splinters you drop at the end of the map. Yes, another loot item, and there's even more to come with this mechanic. Simulacrum splinters will drop when you end the delirium mechanic, and you'll get more of these to drop based on how delirious you are and how many enemies you've killed. So running linear maps will result in more splinters than running a small enclosed map. These splinters turn into a simulacrum key when you collect 300. This is a key you can either sell on trade or use in your map device to enter a specific delirium endgame encounter. They're pretty difficult to fully complete, but they're rewarding enough even if you can only get 70% of the way through, and they're not mega valuable on trade, so if you feel like you want to test one out, feel free to do so. Along with simulacrum splinters, you will also drop delirium orbs at the end of your mirrors. The more reward tiles you have, the more chance you have to get one or multiple delirium orbs. Delirium orbs and simulacrum splinters are going to be your main source of profit from running delirium mirrors, so check prices of both before deciding whether to add this league mechanic into your farming strategy. Delirium orbs start off really low in value early on in the league, but they soon ramp up as juicers use them on their T17 maps. These orbs can be applied to maps to add 20% delirious to the player and a guaranteed reward tile that matches the orb. In the case of the footage, is currency. All you need to know really is the more rewards and higher reward count you get, the more chance you have to drop orbs. These generally only drop during mirror encounters and not during the delirious maps. The last thing to discuss before moving on to delirium layered maps are how map modifiers affect your rewards. The delirium rewards that you drop from your tiles doesn't scale with map modifiers, with quantity or rarity. You'll get the same rewards from a level 5 currency reward on a scoured map or reduced 8 mod map. This means you can, if you want, run fairly risk-free maps if all you want to do is farm a few Delirium Orbs. The rewards counter is based on kills, however, and you get more progress for killing rare, magic, or unique enemies, so it's always best to at least run your map rare. It might allow you to reach 7 layers of rewards on a map instead of 5 or 6. The levels of your rewards get exponentially harder to hit as you progress in levels. Once you hit 5 to 6 rewards, the progress will slow down drastically, but there are scarabs and atlas tree points you can use to help with this. So moving on to the Delirium layered maps, these can either drop or they can be made by applying Delirium orbs to the map. These maps function completely different to Delirium Mirrors. The Delirium is always on, so there's no mirror to run through, but equally you can't stop the Delirium with the skip button. Simulacrum splinters also drop individually throughout the map, which is quite annoying, so most people will just hide these from their loot filter. They're really not worth picking up individually. The rewards also drop each time the counter goes up, rather than in one bulk lot at the end of the map, so it does tend to be much more clicking. Unless you're juicing Delirium maps, they're rarely worth running over the mirrors. One difference the Delirium layered maps have over the mirror is bosses are much more likely to spawn. At 20%, you've got a pretty good chance for one boss to spawn. At 40%, you've got a very good chance for 2 bosses to spawn, and at 60% and above, you're guaranteed to get 2 Delirium bosses. At endgame, this doesn't really matter that much, but early on in the league, these bosses have a chance to drop unique cluster jewels, which can be very valuable early league, so it's something to consider if Delirium orbs are really, really cheap. So to summarize, Delirium layered maps can be good, but most of the ones that drop are going to be rubbish. People who are running Delirious layered maps are making them themselves with orbs, and they're probably juicing the endgame. If you're just farming casually, or you want to alch and go, farming Delirium Mirrors is way more profitable and less clicking than running Delirium maps. So let's go over the Delirium Scarabs, when you might want to use them, and we'll also go over all of the Atlas nodes on the tree and what they actually do to your Delirium encounters or maps. If we start with the Scarabs, the first very common Scarab is just a Delirium Scarab. All this does is guarantee a mirror of Delirium. You can also do this on the map device by going down, clicking Delirium, and then it costs you 6 chaos in the current league. Because Scarabs can be very valuable, most of the time, you're either going to want to force Delirium in with your Atlas tree, or you're going to want to use it on the map device. I very, very rarely recommend using one of these Scarabs. The next Scarab we're going to go through is the Delirium Scarab of Mania. This is a very, very good Scarab for running with Delirium Mirrors, and they're also normally very cheap. What this does is causes your reward bar to fill up 100% faster. So instead of getting something like 5 layers of rewards at the end, you might get to 7 or 8. It does make the map more difficult, which is the second line on this Scarab. Delirium in area increases 50% faster with distance from mirror. So what that would mean is, if we just take an example of Strand, when you get to the end, you might be 50% delirious. If you're running this Scarab, you're going to be 75% delirious. So the enemies will be harder, and then will also hit harder. But for a adequately geared character, I think this is always worth using when you're looking to go through Delirium Mirrors. The next one again is a really, really powerful Scarab. It's called the Scarab of Paranoia. So these are Scarabs that you can use 5 of in your map device. And what they do is they just generate 2 additional rewards straight away. So where you would normally start a Delirium Mirror, you'll have 1 reward. It might be currency. For each of these Scarabs, it gives you 2 more. So if you use 5 of these Scarabs, as soon as you go into the map, you've got 11 rewards, and they're all going to tick up with that counter. So by the end of the map, you might have something like 13 rewards and 13 levels of those rewards. Not only does this mean you drop a ton of loot, it also means you've got a great chance to drop in an absolute ton of Delirium Orbs. They tend to be tied to the price of Delirium Orbs. The way I tend to look at these Scarabs is, if they are about 60% of the price of a Delirium Orb, you should always make profit running them. So if we go to Faustus at the moment on the currency exchange, and then we just go and check for these Scarabs, you can see at the moment, people are trying to buy them for between 6.5 to 7 chaos. If we then go and look at just a random Delirium Orb, so if we use Jewelers, they're going for 11 to 12 chaos. So at that price, they're just about worth using. If the Scarab is the same cost as the Orb, they're not worth using because they don't always guarantee an extra Orb per Scarab. But majority of the time, if you're running a map with these Scarabs, if you're running, say, 4 of them, and a Scarab of Mania, you're going to drop 4 to 7 Delirium Orbs every map. My normal setup, if I'm just doing like an Alch and Go or fairly basic strategy, is 4 Paranoias and 1 Mania. There are 2 other Scarabs that you can use. The first one, which is really only useful early league, is it guarantees all unique Delirium bosses in tier 11 plus maps. So you get 2 bosses, you get Kosis and Onomatopophobia, I think his name is. They'll both turn up. So early in the league, again, it can be good to get their unique cluster jewels. And the other one, which I've never seen anyone run, but it can have its cases, is the Delirium Scarab of Delusions. This means that every map you drop has got layers of Delirium on it. But as I said, most of the random ones you find are going to have bad rewards on, which make you just not want to run the map, and it's not going to be worth any currency on trade. If you don't want to spend money on Paranoia, even just running the maps with 1 Scarab of Mania on a linear map like Strand can get you 7 to 8 layers of rewards at the end of the map. It's really, really nice. So we'll just jump onto the passive tree and we'll have a look at the Delirium nodes. First thing to talk about, which is relevant for any strategy, is every map mechanic has an 8% base chance to spawn. So any chance you pick up on the tree, add 8% to that. These blocking nodes, if a mechanic can be blocked, if you block other mechanics, it'll add 2% each time for your mechanic to spawn, as long as you don't block it. So what I'll go through is very quickly my Atlas setup to making sure I get 100%. There are these 3 nodes here, which add 8% chance for Delirium to spawn, so that's 24. And then we have this cluster here, which gives us 60. So it's 84% chance for Delirium to spawn. That's not enough. We need 100. However, we know we have a base chance of 8, so that actually takes it to 92. And then with me blocking these 4 mechanics here, it gets me up to 100. The reason I go that route is because to get chance to get Delirium without picking up this keystone, I have to basically path here, and then I have to go all the way around here and path up this way to get the remaining chance. I prefer just to use the nodes to block content I don't want to see and get my 100% chance that way. As I say, you could just use it on the map device, but it's 6 chaos you spend in each map. Don't know why you do that when you can get it for free. So we've gone through this cluster here, which is just chance to get Delirium. We have this cluster up here. You get your first 3 nodes, which are just chance to get Delirium. The next one gives your maps 1% chance to have layers of Delirium, pretty pointless. The last one, 3%. These 2 are just pointless. You'd rather drop maps without Delirium on it. People will put the Delirium that they want onto a base map. We have these nodes here, which give essentially more chance for an additional reward type to spawn. And then the last one gives you 8% chance for 3 additional types. These are always worth taking. They're just guaranteed free loot when they proc. The next nodes give you chance to spawn unique bosses, get more simulacrum splinters in the bosses, and more chance to drop unique cluster jewels. You only really want to take these at league start because you want bosses to turn up more often. Other than that, I don't think they're points that I would use in an endgame tree. We'll talk over this wheel here because these are nodes that I don't use very often and certainly not in a normal farming strategy. We'll talk about the keystone first, which is Unending Nightmare. This essentially makes them a little bit like Delirium maps in that the fog never goes once you run through the mirror and you can't end the encounter. The encounter gets even more difficult as you get away from the mirror, but the fog will never disappear. This is good for kind of trying to juice your drops and making sure the Delirium stays, but you can't drop Simulacrum Splinters and you can't drop Delirium Orbs. So if you're farming Delirium for currency, never take this keystone. This is more something you combine with other ways of running maps. You've got this keystone here, which if you are using a Scarab of Mania, don't take. It's going to make the map too difficult. Essentially, this again just makes it more difficult as you get to the end of the map. All this really does is make monsters harder and you'll drop a few more Simulacrum Splinters. Again, I would never take this node. If you struggle with the fog running out, you can take Singular Eternity, which makes the fog move slower. And also when it stops, it's got 10 seconds before it actually dissipates. So with this Atlas tree, you should never really have an issue with the fog running out. What you might find if you've got a quick character though, is you actually run past the fog and have to wait for it. So this is definitely a situational node depending on how quick your character is. I tend to just avoid this completely. If I'm running a linear map, I can get through it quick enough. I can get to the end, I can kill the boss. There's no need for any of this wheel. Probably the most impactful node is Imagined Pursuit. What this does is just +1 to your rewards as soon as you kill the boss. And this is really important because if you're running a linear map, by the time you get to the end, you might be on +7 rewards. To get to +8 is actually a lot of kills. To just automatically get a +1 from ending the map is really good. This is more impactful the more levels of rewards you can get. I always take Screaming Whispers and the nodes leading to it, as this just gives you more simulacrum splinters. And the one here gives you increased reward progress. You should always take the entirety of this wheel. Now there's one more wheel that I've not looked at in this video, which is Paranoid Fixation. This gives your monsters that spawn in the Delirium Mirror a chance to drop Cluster Jewels and Delirium Orbs. It is very rare though. I used to take this all the time. I very rarely get Delirium Orbs drop. It can be good early on when you want to farm Cluster Jewels. You would definitely take this wheel because it gives you much more chance to drop those jewels. But in terms of Delirium Orbs, I very rarely see them drop outside of when they should drop at the end of the mirror. So again, this is an optional wheel that you don't need to take. The only ones I would say are mandatory are getting your chance to 100% one way or another, taking this entire wheel here, and then definitely go up here to get the increased reward types. Now there is a current video on my channel, which is a very simple delirium farming strategy, and it's something I do league after league, and it very rarely changes. So if you want to dip your toes into the delirium water, I'd recommend you go and check that video out. It's a very simple Alk and Go strategy. We use one Scarab, which is the Scarab of Mania, and all you do is you get to the end of the map, kill the boss, end the delirium, take your rewards, rinse and repeat. Again, it's something that works when delirium orbs are 10 to 12 chaos apiece, which are at the moment, and simulacrums hold their value a little bit. It's a very profitable strategy that's fairly easy and takes no investment. And that pretty much covers off what I think new players need to know about Delirium Mirrors, Delirium maps, and just Delirium in general. I've linked the wiki page. It's actually a very useful page for Delirium because it goes into some of the calculations and how some of the scaling works. It can be very, very handy. That's it for this video. There's probably going to be a video for every single mechanic at some point over the next month. If you do find these videos helpful, let me know. Consider leaving me a thumbs up and a subscribe. It really, really helps. Thank you very much. Take care and see you in the next one.